Then I'm gonna talk a little bit about our schedule. Excuse me. Where is it here? I thought I opened it, but it's not open, so I'll open it here and show you. Most of you know because we've talked about this before, but I just want to make sure everybody has all the information that they need for the next week. We have a class this week, so I'll see you today and Wednesday. And then, so today's May 4th. And so we'll meet this week, Monday and Wednesday. And we're going to be finishing up chapters 9 and 10, which is unit 5. And then our test will be next week. And the test is going to be on Wednesday, May 13th. And we're going to do it like our last test, where we meet at our regular time to get the instructions and maybe have a little warm up if we need. I'm not sure I'll do a warm up that day. It depends on the time. But then the test will be open the rest of the day on Wednesday. So you can choose when to do it. That seemed to work pretty well. There were a couple people that never got in and took it. So I'm working with them because I can reopen it or unlock it, however you want to say it. I can unlock it for one individual person temporarily if you still need to get in and take it. So if you did not finish the test on Wednesday, please let me know right away when you want to do it. It needs to be done this week because next week you'll have other tests. Some of you may already have some tests this week. I did mine last week. But we need to at least work out a schedule when you can do that. A couple people, I also did not get your notes, and I reached out to you with an email, so check your Century email, or maybe you already know you didn't remember to upload your notes. So those need to be in the assignment folder marked for the test 4, even though it's not about, even though the test was not unit 4, I'm calling it test 4 because it was our 4th test. We had 2 before the break and we're having 2 after the break. So the link is still in the test. So if for some reason you didn't do your notes or you can't find them or you're gonna have to do it again or something happened, let me know about that. Because if you already submitted your test, you won't be able to go in there and look at it again. But those were the 2 things, submitting the quiz and submitting the notes. And everybody whose notes I got, I already saved the feedback on it, but right now it's private. You won't be able to see it. And I will release those by the end of the week once I've figured out everybody who needs to take the test. I'm trying to think. I graded all of those on, well, I graded all the tests last Friday, but I did not finish grading the notes until yesterday. As you might guess, grading notes the way you did them is much harder than the ones I did with fill in the blank. That's one of the reasons I kind of use the fill in the blank, even though it's a different listening skill than just taking notes. It's much harder to grade regular notes and figure out what I'm giving points for and what I'm not giving points for. And, you know, if you have all the points from the lecture, but your organization of your notes is not good, then do I take off points? It's kind of this difficult thing to try and figure out. But right now, it looks like there are 3 people who didn't do the quiz yet, and I'm in touch with them. But everybody else had really pretty strong grades. Everybody passed, and there weren't even any low C's. There were a couple C's that were kind of middle level C's, and everybody else had A's and B's. So it looks like you're really We say nailing it in English. That means you're really right on the mark. I was going to say you're really nailing this online learning stuff. Everybody's that's continuing with the class is doing really well. So that made me really glad, because, you know, when you give the first online test, you're not sure how people will do, and you don't want people's grades to go way down if they struggle with the online part. So this week, as I said, finishing Unit 5, which is chapters 9 and 10. And then next week, I want to make sure everybody knows we do not have class on Monday. So during final exam time, there are no regular classes. You just go to, and I cross this off because you're not technically going to class. But if your class has been meeting online, like we are, you should still only meet one time next week for your test. So we are not meeting on Monday, but we're having our test on Wednesday. So I will only see you 2 days this week and 1 day next week. This part is also not important anymore because we already know we're finishing everything online. So this is what our schedule looks like. We just have these 2 weeks to go. If you're missing any of the assignments from like the chapters 5 and 7, we had vocabulary worksheets to turn in. You should still do those and put them in the folder. It may seem kind of pointless when you have already done the test and you really don't need to be practicing that vocabulary anymore, but those assignments are for points. And they are enough points that they will make a difference, especially if you skipped both of them. So try and make sure you get those things done if you can. I have not graded the presentations yet. I chose this weekend to grade all the tests first, and I'm also working on some writing assignments for my writing class because those are the things that the students need the feedback on before the final tests next week. And the presentations, obviously, I'm sure you want to see your feedback, but you don't have to give another presentation. So you don't need that feedback at a certain time to get ready for another presentation. So even though you might be really anxious to see your grade for those, on my list, it's farther down on the priorities because it's not a rush for you to get that feedback for another presentation. But for the tests, I want to give everybody their feedback before they take the next test. And for my writing students, I want to give them all the feedback for their grammar and writing assignments before they take the last test. So those things are more urgent. So there's a good chance I won't grade the presentations even till next week during the finals time. So even though I work hard on preparing and grading the tests for finals week, because we're not having regular class time, it is a little bit lighter workload for me. And so that's when I'm planning to grade the presentations. I sent out emails to everybody from your other presentation with the feedback, and that's how I'll do it again this time. So once I fill in the forms that I have for the comments and the feedback on your presentation, I will send it to you by email. So that's what I think that's all the announcements I have. Does anybody have any questions on the schedule or what's coming up? Only a couple of you are unmuted, so if you want to ask a question, you'll have to unmute yourself.
I am missing a Unit 1 test.
I have it. I do have it, Abdi. That's the one you took with Peter, right?
Yep.
It's in a stack of stuff that I'm working on grading.
All right.
Yeah, I should get on that though, because you definitely will want to see how you did.
Yeah.
I have a list going.
Yeah.
The things that Ayan and Abi Rahman asked me in writing class last week, I already did. So I'll put yours on the list too. And I also have a test from Ayan too, actually.
Yeah.
So I'll do yours and Ayan's tests.
All right.
She's in my listening class tomorrow, but I have tests from her too that need to get graded.
Sure.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a question? Okay, we're going to start out with vocabulary. We already did the chapter 9 words. And we went through the meanings already, so you should have this page finished already. This is on page 108. And since we usually work on vocabulary at our tables, and I kind of miss that. I don't know if you miss working with your classmates, but I do, and I think it's a really good, it's a good opportunity to practice your language. I miss doing that, especially in a listening and speaking class. So what I've done is I put the worksheet on D2L. And I'm gonna put you into groups. And you can open the worksheet and type in it if you want to, but you don't have to because you're gonna all be working together, so I'm not gonna grade it. So you can either open it up and type in it if you wanna save it, or you can just open it up and look at it, and you can write the answers either on a piece of paper or on your notes. Like if you're doing an iPad or a tablet, there's a note page you can write on. And so everybody should go to D2L and open this up. So for the May 4th announcements, that's today. It's not an announcement for homework. I put up the worksheet. And it should be opening up. I don't know, my computer's pretty slow, but I'm running the Zoom meeting and recording the Zoom meeting and all kinds of stuff at the same time. So I know it slows everything down. Yeah, I have two meeting things going on at the same time. Okay, so it's gonna look like this. It's the regular form that you had for chapters 5 and 7 that you can type in. You see all those blue boxes are for typing. There's 8 words and 8 sentences, so every word will be used. It shouldn't take you too long to work through it. You probably will want to have your book open to page 108 unless you've already been practicing these words and you know if you know the definitions in your mind pretty well. You might be able to do this quickly, but you might have to look at the definitions too. And so I'm going to put you in groups to do these. So everyone should open it up while I'm building the groups. Open up the document, or it's a PDF actually. So go to D2L and open the file while I'll build the groups. And then when you get into your group, work with each other to try and answer the vocabulary questions, and then we'll go through them together. I think it'll be a good chance to have some conversation because I don't have a discussion thing planned for today. And it'll be the way you're used to working on vocabulary when we were at school. So let me see here who I can put together. Tamari and Nino, I'm going to put you with the other ladies that sit up in the front, Celia, Niru, and that. So technically your group will have 5, even though it's listed as 4 people. So what I always tell you is, actually there's only one group of ladies. The other 2 groups are all men. What I always tell you is turn on your microphone for sure. And if possible, turn on your camera. You don't have to, but it's much easier to have a conversation if you can see people. And James, I'm putting both of yours in one room because I don't know which is your camera and which is your computer. When I open the rooms, you have to click on the join button. And when you're done doing the 8 sentences, you can either leave the room and it'll bring you back here, or you can wait for me and I will pull you all back all at once.
Okay.
Okay, so obviously work on the vocabulary and I'll check in with you for if you have any questions while you're working. So it'll come up with a join button that you have to jump into your room. Tomery and Nino, you need to click on your join button to get into your group. Lee, you need to click on your join button. And Joe, you need to click on your join button. If you're there, your videos aren't on, so I'm not 100% sure if you're at the computer or if you stepped away. But Joe, if you're still there, you should join your group. You're with Sunny and Lee Chang and Abdi. Joe, are you there? Everybody went to their breakout rooms. You need to click on the join button to jump in with your group. I don't know if you're still at your computer or not. You're muted.
This worksheet is digital page.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm interrupting because I forgot to tell you something. When you're done with the vocabulary, you're supposed to go to page 118, 118. It's the first page of chapter 10, and there's some questions there to start discussing our new topic. So when you finish the vocabulary worksheet, then go talk about page 118 before you come back.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks. Joe, are you there? You're muted. I don't know if you're there or not. Everybody went to their breakout rooms. You need to. So yeah, this is on page 116. We just talked about all the strategies for making a good visual aid. So we're going to watch the video of the student after he got some suggestions about improving this visual aid, and we're going to see what he did with that. So I'm going to play that on my computer, and you should all be able to see and hear it. So this was a presentation that goes with chapter 9 on slang. They were supposed to share some slang expression from their country and what the meaning is, and then how this slang word developed or was created. Okay, I have no sound. And I don't know why. My volumes are up. The video has the volume up. I don't know why it's not playing anything.
Kachai,
There you go.
to me.
So I think it was frozen. So you were just seeing the video but not hearing his voice.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna close a couple things on my computer to keep that from happening again. I think it's buffering actually. I think that's why you're not hearing it. Okay, let's try that again.
Today, I would like to tell you about a slang expression that I learned about when I traveled to Chile.
So it's still not showing us the thing right. Let me try one more different thing.
Today, I would like to tell you about a slang expression that I learned about when I traveled to Chile. People in Chile speak Spanish, and they have a lot of slang. The expression is cachar. It's a popular slang expression that means to understand. If Chileans want to be informal and
So you notice, look how few words are on his screen. This is the title, and then there's 3 words and 3 words compared to what's in the book with all the full sentences. So it's a really good example of how you can cut out almost all the words and still understand his point.
Chileans want to be informal and ask someone if they understood. They say, "Cachai?" To me, did you catch my meaning? This is a slang expression. The proper word to use is entender. So, in official Spanish, they would say, "Entiendes?" To me, do you understand? If you notice, cachar sounds like the word catch in English. In fact, Chileans borrowed the word catch and added AR at the end because many verbs in Spanish end in AR. They made a Spanish word from an English word.
So hopefully you were able to see a huge difference there. I talked about this one. And then his last screen also has very, very few words on it. Just the English word where it came from, a borrowed word. We have that in English as well. A borrowed word means it came from another language. And you may not be aware, but a lot of words come from other languages, especially some of you who are Spanish or French speakers have some of the same shared words in English that we've borrowed from other languages. The most obvious ones are things like pasta is borrowed, tacos, burritos, a lot of those food items, we just keep the name from the original language and we don't change it. But we have a lot of other words that come from other languages as well. So those are the highlights for this last skill. Even though you don't need it for the presentation, there will be questions about this on the last test. And then as you might remember, I've mentioned before to pay attention to these boxes. So on page 117, there's also another box here with a couple of strategies. So both of we call them shaded boxes, meaning they're not white. They look kind of light grayish or light tan. The box on page 117 and this box on page 116 are the best ways to review this skill, and actually all the skills we've done. That shaded area is where they really describe the strategies for you. Then we talked about this in your groups. So I want to just talk about number 5. We don't have time to go through all the questions because we've been going for a while now, but how do you think knowing English is going to help you in your future? And most of you are muted, so you'll have to unmute if you want to answer. Hopefully you talked about this in your groups, so you already have an answer ready that you talked about, or you can share something from your group that someone else said in your discussion. What do you think? What are some of the benefits of knowing English in an international economy, in an international setting that we have in our world today?
Communication.
Okay, say a little bit more about that.
You can communicate with the people.
Or where, or
just if you want to make it, if you want to go some other country, you can communicate with them. That's the only language that if you want to make business, yeah.
Okay, good. Any other ways English will benefit you?
I don't know about other country, but in my country, if you know English and if you speak well English, you will get better job, and you're better candidate than the people who doesn't know English. So this is one of benefits of English in my country, to know English.
Yeah, if you think about other countries, if you want to work in business or in a store or a bank or a hotel, oftentimes they'll get customers, and maybe they aren't customers from the US or Canada. Maybe it's a customer from Italy going to Georgia, right?
Yes, and for
they
example,
won't know Georgian, but they might know English. And if the Georgian person also knows English, it's a way to communicate, yeah.
yes, and my profession is agronomy. So in my when I was working in Georgia, we had a lot of visitors from a lot of agronomy from other country. We had to communicate with them. So if I knew English and I would know I knew English, it was better for me and for my job and for everything. I knew English to communicate with the other people for the foreign agronomy. So it's really good benefits in my country.
Good. Any other things?
It's more easy to learn the knowledge from the book or website.
That's a very key point, Li Cheng. A lot of websites are in English, right? It's actually the most common language on the internet is English. So yes, most articles or news is often written in English. A lot of research is written in English.
But right now, the technology could translate those English to be the language, whatever you want. But it's not translated very well. It's not to understand very well. But you have to learn the English to understand more clearly.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, a lot of research is in English.
Yeah, yeah. If you're doing anything in sciences or business research or statistical research, but that also kind of ties in what Li Cheng was saying with information is education. All of you are getting your education in English, right?
Yeah.
You might not have to. You could go to university in your home country, but some things you want to be able to go to a new place and learn about their new business business techniques, or like Nino said, for agriculture, or for sciences or medicine, right? We also have a lot of people that come from around the world to universities here to study theology. So teaching for seminaries or leading in religious things, a lot of that is going to be in English too. So those are a lot of good reasons. For the week, we're going to finish up chapter 10. It's not that many days, but you can read about the international English here. Oh, did anybody figure out the answer for number 1? Did anyone look that up, or did you make a guess?
The first question?
Yeah, the first question. Does anybody know the answer, or did somebody look it up?
The first language.
I looked it up. You don't need to look it up. I'm just curious what you talked about in your groups.
I think it's around 500 million.
Yeah, it depends on, the numbers I found are not current. They're from 2017, so I'd have to do a little more research. The difference is, are you just talking about people who know some English, okay, like all of you, or people who are like from the US and Canada and Australia and India and some of the countries where they have English as an official language, then that would be their primary language. So the numbers I found said something like close to 500 million speak English as their first language, and over 7 billion know some English. Now, in the lecture, they're going to talk about if you're a taxi driver in a city like Paris, France, you might only know enough English to ask your passengers where they need to go and tell them how much money they owe you for their ride, right? He may not know, he or she who has that job might not know English to be able to come here and go shopping or go to school or do anything like that. So they might only know a small amount of English, but they know some English. The other example they give is if you're a pilot on an airplane and you're flying internationally, a lot of the airports, you have to know English to communicate when you're coming in with your plane. So you might only know the things you need to say for flying the airplane, but you might not know enough English to carry on a regular conversation. So it's a very interesting topic. And the lecture is very interesting, and you're going to watch that for Wednesday. So look over the article if you're interested in reading more about the background, but I mostly want to focus on the vocabulary again.
Okay.
This is super easy vocabulary because it's multiple choice with only 2 answers. As a teacher with my training, I would say this is a bad question if there's only 2 answers, because you can know nothing about the topic and still guess and mostly get it right. But the words here is worldwide, which is an adjective. It means around the whole world. It means the same as global. So it's A, everywhere.
Yep.
Number 2, an economic barrier. A barrier is something that stops you. So it prevents countries from doing business. We talk at Century, actually, we being the people who work at Century, talk all the time when I'm in meetings. It's very often that we talk about barriers for students, meaning we don't want any barriers. We don't want things to get in the way of students getting into our classes and successfully completing our classes. And economic means what?
What is about money?
Yeah, it has to do with business and money. So economic barriers are barriers that countries have with relating to money. Political is an adjective. It's pretty straightforward. It has to do with politics. So it would be about government. This is just like we use the word music and musical. politics and political. A member is a noun. We have the article here, a member, and it's a individual person or a group. So you are all a member of my class, right? You're all a member of some reading class probably. You're a member of your family. You're a member of your community. You might be a member of a religious group or a church or a mosque. You might be a member of a club. When something is significant, it's important. It has either an important effect or an important influence. The use of English around the world is significant because it has a huge impact on people's interaction around the world, either through business or like through travel or leisure things. Benefit is an advantage. So something good that happens is a benefit. That's a noun also. Significant is an adjective. I didn't say that one. 7, fluent. That's an adjective. You are fluent. The noun is fluency. So those are both related in meaning, and it has to do with being at a high level. So if you're fluent in a language, that means you have a high level of expertise in that language. We also talk about fluency with having a natural language and having your, if you're fluent in writing or fluent in speaking, your English flows smoothly like a normal native speaker. Unique we already had, but I can't remember if it was in this class or my reading class. It means different. So something that's unique is only one. Uni means one, like unity means united as one. So there's only one of something if it's unique. So it's different and special from other things. And then your last one is to play a role. And that means to be involved in something. And this reminds me of our very, very first chapter where we talked about marketing and gender spending. We had a phrase very similar to this, which was to have a say. Having a say means you're part of the decision, and playing a role also means you're involved in something. So all these different things, language, politics, and culture all have a part in international agreements, either between governments or businesses. They're all these things are involved in making an agreement between countries or businesses internationally. So that's a super quick overview, but those are all our new words. And when you come to class on Wednesday, we're going to be working on a worksheet with these words. The practice links are already on D2L, so you can start practicing those as well. You have a little bit of an advantage because my first class, my reading class, our test is on Monday, but you have a little bit more than a week to get ready for our last test. We do not have any new lecture language for this unit. They just want you to review all the other lecture language that's come up in the chapters, and we did not do page 69, that's in chapter 6. We did not do chapter 6. We only did 5 and 7 for that last test. So our first test was chapters 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and then 5 and 7. So if you go back to these pages, you should review these lecture language. They want you to put a few examples in here. You can do that if you want to, or you can just go back and review them on your own. But there will be some of these on the final test, along with chapter 10, some of the main ones that we've learned for the topic and the big picture. We've talked about those all semester, so hopefully you know what those are already. Transition means when you're moving from one point to another point or another section of the lecture. Definitions and examples and important information. Those three we've talked about since the break when we've come back. So those are signals that you need to know when the speaker is giving you a new definition or giving you example or giving you important information. And the 5 and 7 ones should be pretty fresh in your mind because we just did those last week on the test. You might need to review a little bit more the first 4 chapters, but they give you the page numbers to go back and review. So that should be a good place to review. On the next page, they give you some practice to use these. So they have one example of each thing in the lecture. So the first time you listen to the lecture, you're just gonna look at the content or the information in the lecture and match up these thoughts. And then the second time you listen to the lecture, you're gonna be filling in the lecture language for each of these examples. So they give you an example of introducing the topic, and then they want you to write down what the topic is. They give you an example of the big picture. If you remember, the big picture is what we call the plan or how the lecture is organized. In other words, are there going to be multiple sections in this lecture? Are there going to be 2 things that are being compared in this lecture? Transition goes from one point to a new point or a new section of the lecture. A definition, an example, an explanation is the one we skipped. So you might not be able to find that one. I might actually be able to give you a clue what that is. Hang on one second here. I can give you the answer for number 6 so that you have it and you'll be able to track with it when it comes up. Number 6 is, whoa, I just went too far. Hang on. I started to scroll and it just went like down 6 pages here. Number 6 is let me explain, which it seems pretty clear for an explanation. And it's talking about explaining that students are not only exposed to English in the classroom, but they also are living in a place where they hear English outside of the classroom. And that's actually one thing that I've thought a lot about in the last 5 weeks since the school made the decision to go online, because when you're at school all day for classes, you hear a lot of English all day, even when you're not in class. But obviously when you're at home and you're just logging in sometimes for classes, you're hearing a lot less English, which is unfortunate. But these other 6 questions, you should be able to find a signal word for those in the lecture. So that's going to be your homework.
I have a question.
Sure.
Are gonna be in final exam this kind of exercise?
No.
No? Good.
No, but there will be note taking again.
Oh.
And so knowing these words will help you find the points that you need to find for the note taking. I did the feedback on the note taking, but I haven't released it yet because not everybody took the test yet. So I need to get on those people. I've told them they need to take it this week for sure. But I will hopefully be able to talk about that on Wednesday, about your note taking on the test. But once I release the feedback, I wrote a lot of comments on it. so that I could give you some suggestions about. Overall, I would say I was very happy with people's notes. Because we hadn't done it this way very much, I wasn't sure how it would go. But I thought most people did a really great job on their notes. Maybe missing a little bit of organization or missing a couple of points. But to be honest, it was not an easy lecture. I thought it was a very interesting lecture because media is a very interesting topic, but it was not easy, I know that. So when I release the notes, you'll be able to see my comments about what you did or didn't do correctly. So that's really the only way this will show up on the, there will not be something like this on the test, but there will be something like this where you have to know, if I give you a lecture language, you have to know if it's introducing a topic or introducing a definition or introducing an example. So you will have to review some of these. And I do have an online activity for these also that you can start practicing.
Okay.
I have not put it up yet, but I can show you what it looks like. I only put up the vocabulary links so far. So this is the website where I make all the activities. And this is lecture ready to their lecture language practice. So this is a matching game. And what you're going to be matching is these 5 different meanings that we learned with the words. So listen to this is an important information. In other words, is a definition. I'm going to give some background. Is a transition? Nope. It's a big picture plan. So when I click on this, see how it gets dark blue?
Yeah.
Then you know it's selected, and then you click the match. So you saw what happened when I did the wrong one. It turns red, and then that will go away, so you have a chance to choose again. Let me repeat that as important information. So you'll notice that this is a plan. First we'll discuss this, and then we'll discuss that. That's the plan. I want to focus on is the plan. Nope, that's your topic, I bet. Let me start with is also a new idea. Pay attention to this is important. Higher pitch. We talked about that in chapter 9. That's a tone in your voice. That's important information. What? Oh, I made that a separate category, emphasizing with pronunciation. So technically they're emphasizing it because it's important, but, and now I want to discuss is a transition. So you'll notice these 2 have 3, this one has 2, and these 2 have 1. But every time you finish one and you click on new game, it'll give you a new group. So for example, speaking louder is another one of the signals we learned for pronunciation. Let's move on to is a transition. I want to point out is important information. Speaking slowly is another pronunciation. So illustrate is an example. So a lot of these you might recognize, but if you do the practice more, you'll start remembering more of them that we learned even in the past months. And if you want to start out kind of using these pages in your book to kind of review, then you'll be more ready to do the online practice. So I'll be putting up all the stuff for the test. And for your homework, you need to focus on pages 119 and 122. And then next week we'll have our test. Wednesday, we're gonna talk about the lecture for chapter 10. Okay?
Okay.
Any questions?
Okay, no, so far no.
So I'm gonna stop recording and wrap up.